All right, are we on? I talk like that as if I'm actually speaking to someone, but there's no one behind the camera. It's just me by myself right now. All right, Ali Mac on YouTube. Where did Volk go? Here he is. He was down under, dare we say. All right, guys. Ali Mac is officially on YouTube, and it's very exciting this week in particular because it is UFC 314, Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes, a fight that I have been dreading, but also highly anticipated for.
Because I'm a big fan of both, so I would love to see it, but I also hate to see it if Volk fought Diego Lopes.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, man, the fringe benefit.
Yeah, we love him.
It'd be a bit of a, because I love both Alex and Yuri, so when they fought, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's hard
It'll be the
sometimes,
same
isn't it?
thing if Volk and Diego fought.
I love Diego.
Yeah.
I don't hide the fact that as an Australian, I'm going to be backing Volk, but you know, I'm also a very, very big fan of Diego Lopes. Anyone that has been following me now would know that. I had the honor of meeting Diego in Macau, and he was so lovely. Macau was back in November. I said to him there, I wish that he was fighting in Australia, which would have been 312. And in my head, I was thinking, I'm pretty sure if things add up, it was going to be Volk, and I wanted it to be just because of how big of a fight it was, but my heart as well was saying, please no. But here we are. For the vacant featherweight title as well, which is very exciting because of the whole Ilia Topuria saga, which we will get into today. Like I said, this is exciting stuff because it's my first video on YouTube. We'll figure out a structure as we go, but I figured that we'd have some sort of pre-314 chit-chat Japanese session, which I enjoy doing, and I'm hoping that some of you guys would like to listen to. So I've got a few topics that I want to talk about today. First one being things that I think you need to know ahead of 314. This can be for your casual fans, this can be for your more serious fans that maybe you've just forgotten some things and need a refresher. This can also be for the girlfriend or boyfriend of a UFC fan that doesn't really know anything that's going on but is being forced to watch this weekend. Some little tips that I think would be good to know. Also going to talk about some like what ifs. What if Diego wins? What if Volk wins? We've got Paddy and Chandler. How does that go in terms of title contention? Will the Fighting Nerds winning trajectory continue on after this weekend? So a lot of questions to be answered. And then finally, I'm also going to go through my picks on the main card, which some of you may have seen on my Instagram channel, me speaking about, or me posting about my picks, Ted's picks, Mama Mac's picks, and Throat Goat's picks. I'm going to break down some of mine. Just thought that this would be a fun way to yap a little bit longer. I feel like the type of content on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, they're all really different, and I want to be transparent in, you know, trying to get on as many different platforms as possible. And I just like yapping about the UFC. I don't have MMA friends. My MMA friends are my dog, my partner, and my mum. But I like that I've created this little community online where, you know, we all go back and forth with each other right now on Instagram, and hopefully I can create a little community on YouTube as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Now, here are my things to know ahead of UFC 314. I'm going to start off with 5 fight recommendations that you should watch. Because besides all of the drama and chit-chat that happens and press conferences and things like that, at the end of the day, it is the fight game. So when it comes to fight history, my recommendations would be Alexander Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie. We'll go Diego Lopes versus Brian Ortega. We'll go Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje. Paddy Pimblett versus King Green. And Gian Silva versus Drew Dober. Honorable mention to Michael Chandler and Patricio Pitbull, because those two have history. There has been a weight division change, but a great one to watch nonetheless. Watch those to get yourself hype up if you want to get excited for this weekend, or if you can't wait for this weekend and you want to watch some fights, those would be my recommendations. Now, the little backstory, Dominic Reyes versus Nikita Krylov. Now, Krylov, don't hold that against me. I feel like I want to say Krylov, but I feel like you also can't blame me because we haven't seen him fight in a while. I believe he did not fight in 2024, but I have actually put my money on him. Now, this is because while we haven't seen him fight in a while, the last few wins that he does have are against guys like Gustafsson and Özdemir, and I believe that they were finishers too. So that's not something to be overlooked. He's going up against Dominic Reyes, who we know, Reyes. He has this history of that interesting fight with John Jones. One of the first fights that I do remember watching live before I was like a proper UFC fan, and I had my thoughts on that John Jones-Reyes decision. And then after that, unfortunately, he did have some losses, but recently has been in the win column. And I would love for Reyes to continue being on this winning journey. However, I'm not sure. He was ill. He's getting older. Although you could say the same thing for Nikita. So it's a difficult one, but overall, two older guys that are still in the game and still have something to prove. They're not quite at the stage of their careers where they're finished and are willing to just fight for the sake of it. They both still want to win. And I've got my money on Nikita for that one. So next up, Patricio Pitbull and Yair Rodriguez. Pitbull is coming from Bellator, was a champ there and fought the likes of Michael Chandler and has been in the game for a very long time. Yair Rodriguez, he's coming off 2 losses, but they're against guys like Alexander Volkanovsky and Brian Ortega. But he's a very, very flashy fighter. Really, really fun to watch. And it's going to be interesting to see how he is going to come off after those losses because he's almost holding the flag for the UFC. In the past, it's been a bit of a hit and miss with champions from other organizations coming into the UFC. We've got Michael Chandler, Yuri Prohaska, Michael Venom Page, Kaya Sakura. Sometimes they do well, sometimes they don't. But to me, overall, the standard of the UFC has proven time and time again to be that next level. That being said, that doesn't work in Pitbull's favor. Also the fact that he is older. I've seen a lot of comments saying that he is washed and his time is up. So going up against a guy who's been at the top of the UFC featherweight division, it's going to be a tough one for him. But in saying that, I've got my money on Pitbull. I don't know. And then Jean Silva versus Bryce Mitchell. Now this is a juicy one. Bryce Mitchell had a bit of controversy a few months ago, I believe, or a month or 2 ago, where he said some things that were politically incorrect when addressing history. And Bryce Mitchell has always been a fighter that has been very vocal about his opinions of things. And in the past, I believe a lot of fans and personalities have overlooked it, just saying that's just who Bryce is. He's a crazy guy, he says crazy things, but the last few comments that he made seem to have crossed the line with a lot of people, particularly Jean Silva. Now, Jean Silva, both fighters actually, I believe, are religious, Christianity, correct me if I'm wrong, but after Jean Silva's latest win, he called out Mitchell and basically was talking about beating him until he realizes that the earth is round. And I had never seen such a quick call out to fight announcement, I think ever. I believe it was like a week or a week and a half from when Silva had won to having that next fight announced. And I do also believe that Bryce Mitchell was supposed to fight in Karate Combat, and then that got cancelled because of this announcement. So lots of verbal drama surrounding this one, both very, very loud and interesting personalities. I'm obviously going to pick Silva here, but I don't want people to overlook Bryce Mitchell. I think this drama has caused a lot of people to perhaps overlook Mitchell in a way, but the only losses recently that Mitchell has had have been against Ilia Topuria and Josh Emmett, who are 2 very big names within the featherweight division, and this is a huge step up for Silva. So it's going to be a really, really big test for him. But in saying that, he has been on this very dominant winning trajectory of having finishes and He's got a great personality that I know that the UFC loves. So if he can get this done, he is a superstar in the making, which I think he can, but I definitely don't think that fans and the public in general should be overlooking Mitchell in any way, because the last win that he had over Kron Gracie, he looked really good. And despite coming off of a really bad, probably one of the worst KO losses that we've seen against Josh Emmett, the fight that he had against Kron Gracie, he looked really, really good. So definitely not one to look over. A very, very good challenge for Silva. And Silva, you know, he had a quick fight last time, but this is a very big step up for him. So I'm very curious to see how it'll go. And then we have the co-main event. This is one that I'm probably the most nervous for. So when it comes to history of this fight, we've got Paddy Pimblett, Michael Chandler. I find a lot of the matchups on this card are kind of young gun versus old dog energy. You know, Diego being the young one, Volk being the old one, Paddy being the young one, Michael being the old one, Silva being the young one, Mitchell being the old one. Like, not so much old, but just who's been in the UFC longer and then who is just coming in now. Like Pitbull, for example, he's the older one, but he's just joining the UFC now with Yair Rodriguez, who has had many, many greats within the division. So when it comes to Paddy and Chandler, that matchup is a very, very exciting one for me. Michael Chandler hasn't had the best run in the UFC when it comes to his results. However, every single fight that he has been explosive, and he knows how to put on a show. He's a great performer and will always slug it out and is willing to literally die to put on a fight for the fans. When you think of his fights with Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, which I got to see in the flesh, he loves to feed off that crowd energy and do whatever he can to get that performance. In saying that, when it comes to those later rounds, perhaps he thrives too much on that energy that he makes some silly decisions, and that causes him to not get his hand raised. In saying that, it proves that he's got the stamina. You know, he's very, very used to brawling for 5 rounds straight, whereas Paddy, he has not had to train for a UFC 5-round fight ever. And coming up against a guy that is used to doing that to the level that Chandler does is a very, very big step up. This is also a step down in terms of rankings of who Chandler's fighting, because Chandler is used to fighting guys that have been at the top of the division since the beginning, since he entered the UFC. And this will be the first fight that he's fighting lower. And I'm not sure if that means that Chandler will want to show off a more dominant finish and not have those kind of 5-round brawls, or will he continue to be that showman? Because I would like to see a dominant finish here, and I'm leaning towards Paddy doing that. So Paddy being the young one, I do really like that he said in his media leading up to this that he doesn't want to be called a prospect anymore. He wants to start being called a contender. And that was a really good point that I think he raised. I really liked that, because I agree. Paddy's had an interesting journey in the UFC. He started off having this crazy personality that people loved, and then unfortunately, I believe it was his fight against Jared Gordon that I think the way he was attitude-wise after that fight, it wasn't received very well by the fans. He took a step back, became a lot more humble, and then got more dominant wins and is now being that favorite once again. To me, Paddy has kind of gone like this, and then he had this, and then he's come back up. Undefeated in the UFC still, but he's got a lot to prove to the audience. I feel like the audience still doubts him in a way, and what he did to King Green was great, but this is a very, very big step up. So for me, I think Paddy, I would love to see him submit Chandler. That's going to be difficult, seeing as what Oliveira could not do that second time. I'm not sure how it'll go, but I'm hoping that Paddy can do it. Also because I like betting on the younger guys in a way that it just creates more movement within the division as well. I'm not sure how many more fights Chandler believes that he has in him left, and as a fan of the UFC, I want to see things continue to move forward, and I think And I hope that Paddy's going to be able to be that guy to do that, you know, fight for a bit longer, regularly, and he's got a great personality to show as well. So I'm going to put my money on Paddy there. And then the main event. Oh my goodness. Alexander Volkanovski is fighting Diego Lopes. Now, as I said in the beginning, this is a fight that I have been praying for, dreading for, highly anticipated for. I'm so torn and heartbroken on this one, but very, very excited that Australia could potentially be bringing a belt home. I'm going to be very blatantly honest that I'm not going to go against the Aussie. I have to go with Volk here, but let's break it down. Alexander Volkanovski has come off a decent chunk of time off after 2 knockouts against Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria. Now, those two are 2 of the pound-for-pound best in the world right now, who many want to see fight each other. But in saying that, how highly regarded those 2 fighters are, if those are the only 2 that you've lost to, that's an incredible feat. And before those 2, Alexander Volkanovski was that guy in the featherweight division for, I believe, like 4 to 5 years. Something like that. He was the GOAT of that division for so long and was #1 pound for pound. He took that fight, the first fight he had against Islam, which I saw in person, was incredible. He looked great. The second fight he had against Islam was on short notice, which he should not have done. He wasn't prepared properly, and he said that himself. He lost there, and then very soon after took the fight for Ilia and lost there again. So just those 2 losses, I guess, I can understand where fans find it difficult to look past. They call him old man Volk, but maybe I'm blinded by the Australian glaze, but I've just been watching him train for a really long time recently, and I feel like he looks good. He knows what it's like to have that belt, and he wants it back, and I think that he can do it. To me, Diego Lopes, now he is on this winning streak right now as well. I believe this is his 6th or 7th fight in the UFC, and has only lost to that first one against Movsar, who Movsar is another thing that we know. I believe both of them have said if either of them win, he'll be getting the next title shot. So Diego has been on this winning streak, but I guess when it comes to the caliber of who he's been fighting, there are questions to be said there. The most highly regarded win he has being over Brian Ortega. Now, Brian Ortega is one of the guys within the featherweight division that has been there for such a long time. And it's no easy feat to be able to defeat him in the way that Diego did. At the Sphere, it was such a spectacle. The way that Diego knocked him out and then woke him up with another punch. Like, Diego from day one of entering the UFC has been such a crowd favorite. And I have fallen victim to that. He is so likable and so respected within the UFC. And that's really difficult to come by for someone that hasn't been around for that long. It normally takes a while to build up your character and your personality and have fans develop their liking to you. But Diego did that from day one. Be that his haircut, I don't know. But I have definitely fallen under his spell and I'm such a big fan. And purely, I will say, the only reason that I'm going against him is because I have this patriotism towards Volkanovski. And I'm not going to deny that. And I'm very, very blatantly obvious when it comes to my Australian bias. And anyone that knows me knows that I love Diego. So that's me kind of breaking down the main event and its history and what my picks are. So I've got Volk, Paddy, Silva, Pitbull, and Krylov. I don't know. That's what we've got there. And then I want to talk about my what ifs after 314, because while there's a lot of anticipation for this fight night ahead, it's also got a lot of questions to be answered from the results. When you look at the main event, that in itself, it's for the vacant featherweight title. That's because Ilia Topuria vacated that belt because he wanted to move up to lightweight. We don't know who Ilia's fighting yet, whether that be an Islam, a Charles, a Gaethje, an Arman. There's so many questions to be said around that. But it's an interesting one because if Volk wins this weekend, Volk has lost to Ilia. And it's going to be this thing of, yes, he has the belt, but is he the true champion of that division? Disregarding the history that he's had, but we know that he's lost to someone who's vacated that title. And then if Diego wins, it's like, well, Diego never had to fight Ilya either. So you've got one guy that's lost to Ilya and the other guy that's never had to fight Ilya. That's a bit of an interesting one, don't you guys think? And then Ilya in itself is another conversation. So I want to know what you guys think. How does this title, I guess, shape the future of the featherweight division? Will you be content if neither Volk or Diego ever have to fight Ilya again? Or do you see, maybe if Volk does it because we know that he's moved up before, can you see him going up to fight Ilya? Or do you think he just lets that one, go to the side and we just forget about that and he stays at 145? And then within 145 again, we've got Jean Silva versus Bryce Mitchell. It seems like the UFC really want to push Silva because he's got such a great personality. He's got these dominant finishes. If he does beat Mitchell, I can see him getting quite a boost up in the rankings and him becoming a part of that top contender conversation. Where do you think he would fall there? And then if Mitchell wins, where does he go from there? Because he's been someone that's been hanging around for a while too. A very big personality within the UFC, within the division. See what I mean? There's just a lot of potentials and contention surrounding the featherweight division right now that I'm curious to see how this weekend will continue to shape that. And then in a similar way, Chandler and Paddy, is that fight a #1 contender fight? I don't think so. I think they probably have 1 or 2 in them after this fight, whoever wins, just because there are so many guys above them right now within that conversation. Like I mentioned, we've got Islam, who is having conversations of an Oliveira rematch. Arman never got his title shot. Islam has never fought Gaethje before. Gaethje arguably should have gotten that title shot instead of Dustin Poirier. There's a lot going on. So if Chandler wins, I think he said he's going to call out McGregor. That's another conversation. But if Paddy wins, who do we have next for him there? Because we've also got Rufi in the conversation as well from the Fighting Nerds, who he's called out Beneil Dariush. I hear that that's being in the works too. So Dariush was supposed to fight Moicano. Moicano stepped up to get that title shot. It's all very kind of pretzel-y and incestuous right now when it comes to who's fighting who. But it's exciting because I feel like there's a lot of young names and new fighters and fresh meat for us to see, but they're going up against these legends like Volk, Holloway, Poirier, Gaethje, Oliveira. The UFC is in a very interesting spot right now that some people love and some people hate. I love it. This is probably the most stacked fight night that we've had this year. And I'm so excited for it. I've got so much FOMO that I'm not there right now. I've got so many friends I've got so many friends that are there right now. The FOMO is definitely real. But I am going to aim to go to International Fight Week and I'm going to make a very, very big trip out of that. And now that I'm on YouTube, it'll be a whole content thing as well. So thank you guys for watching. I've got no idea how I'm going to edit this. I'll probably recommend you guys listen to these long form style of videos. Just, have it on in the background, listen to me yap. I know the way that I like to watch my long form videos, and it's kind of like a podcast or just having something on in the background, listening to people talk. So it'll be really cool if people feel that way about my content. But yeah, I will be back with a kind of breakdown and recap of 314 after the fights. So we'll see how we go. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on Instagram and TikTok as well. I look forward to growing this community. So yeah, thanks for watching.